This is No Talking in the Library, Mentor Public Library's media podcast where we talk about movies, TV, comic books, pretty much anything we find interesting. Hi, I'm Meredith.
And I'm John.
And this is No Talking in the Library, and we're coming at you from the 48th floor of the Triskelion today.
Well, yeah, where better? So today we're going to be talking about Mockingbird, who's a sort of recurrent character in the Marvel comic universe. She first showed up, I think, in like 1972. She sort of shows up periodically when they need a sort of interesting and aggressive female character. She's a martial arts expert and a biochemist on top of everything else. I mean, if you watch her character on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which we may talk about a little later, like, she basically is a scientific polymath of some kind.
Yeah, it's like when you need a female character who doesn't have the baggage of Black Widow, like, here's Mockingbird, she's a scientist.
Right, yeah. So we can get into, there's some interesting stuff to talk about that, too. I think one of the things that was really sort of driving us to talk about this was the 8-issue series that Marvel did. Was it all last year?
Yeah, it was from March of 2016 through October it started as actually a one-shot the fall before.
Right, was that sort of 50th, S.H.I.E.L.D. 50th anniversary where they did a bunch of different...
Yeah, and this is only sort of relevant, but I was looking for my copy of Agent Carter S.H.I.E.L.D. 50th anniversary, and I can't find it.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know where past Meredith would have filed it. Like, did she put it with Operation Sin and the other Peggy Carter comics? Did she put it with the S.H.I.E.L.D. comics or some other random place that I have yet to decide where that is? But that's neither here nor there. Today we're talking about Mockingbird.
Right. So, where should we start?
So, I guess we should start with the one-shot itself.
Sure.
Which was written by Chelsea Cain, who's actually a novelist. She writes, I think, thrillers.
Right, and this is a kind of a cool thing that Marvel does periodically, where they actually bring in other people to plot people from outside the sort of straight comics realm to plot some of their one-shots or shorter series, and it's kind of an interesting thing, especially in Chelsea Cain's case. Yeah,
so this one-shot was just about Bobbi Morse, who is Mockingbird. The comic was about her mentor or something. I just skimmed it. Right.
It was about the woman who sort of was the mentor for her getting murdered, and it turns out that she's kind of freelancing in the investigation. Also, interestingly, at the sort of beginning of this, it turns out that she's having a relationship with Lance Hunter, who's a character who is one of the main kind of love interests for her.
That seemed to be drawn from... It was like one of those sort of circular things from... It was a fix for the TV show that made its way back into the comics.
Right, yeah. The TV show, that is to say, she appeared in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. starting in season 3, I think.
Yeah.
It was the first episode of the season because it had that opening episode with Gemma Simmons on the treadmill running to...
In the Hydra base.
Right.
But Bobbi Morse's character has often been linked with Hawkeye, Clint Barton. They were married, and then they were exes who partnered up for missions, but they obviously couldn't use Clint in the television show because that character is wrapped up in the MCU, so they brought this other sort of very minor character in Lance
Hunter.
Yeah, Lance Hunter to be the ex of Bobbi, and then when this one shot started, they brought him back into Bobbi's orbit. And so this comic was written by Chelsea Cain and drawn by Joelle Jones, who is really excellent. She does her create her own series, Lady Killer, and she recently did the Supergirl miniseries, Supergirl Being Super, with Mariko Tamaki, which was very good. And I guess the comic, this one-shot, was popular enough that Marvel decided to give Chelsea Cain an ongoing series. And I really liked it. I thought the character was a little bit different from what we've seen before, and Chelsea Cain jumped right into this sort of comic writing world in a way that was really good to read. And right out of the gate, the Mockingbird series became my favorite thing. It's just so good.
Yeah, it's really the art. The art by Kate Niemczyk, I think, is really, really good. It's kind of a little more kind of older style.
It's a little softer than Joel Jones. Joel Jones is a very sharp art style.
Yeah. The plotting, I think, was really good. And the way that she related to the Lance Hunter character, I thought was really interesting. They were really clearly, in most respects, equals, although she was slightly the dominant character in certain respects. And I think that it made her into a really interesting and kind of filled out character. They also had really funny stuff in it, like that scene when she's like, so she periodically has to go into the sort of SHIELD medical center.
Yeah, actually, before John gets into that, let me just describe, because this first arc is a little bit different than what we've seen, and I think it comes from Chelsea Cain being a novelist. She really thought through this plot. Like, it's really well plotted. She described it as a puzzle box. So the very first issue of Mockingbird actually covers like a longer point of time, and the next 4 issues fill in those different spaces. So you see her in this first issue wearing like 4 different outfits in her 4 different trips to the SHIELD medical base.
Right.
And you don't know why she's wearing, like, why there's a corgi or why she's wearing like a scuba suit.
Right.
But then each issue fills that in.
Right. And I mean, it's kind of cool too. This I really love. It had sort of like lots of nice little touches. Like when she's in the medical center at one point, in the background you see Jessica Jones and Luke Cage, and they're covered in measles spots. They have their baby. And then in another one, she's like sitting next to Black Widow.
Yeah, I think Tony Stark's there reading like a pamphlet on STDs.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, it had a kind of... The thing that's really interesting about it, too, is over the course of the 8 issues, like you could look at it and be like, God, there's no way that they should have been successful, because the second part is built into Marvel's Civil War II sort of uber arc, which was really... Some parts of it I thought were good, but a lot of it was not, and it was not like... I mean, the problem was not that it was terrible, but it just wasn't interesting enough to carry, like, all of the baggage that they laid on it.
Yeah, different comics had different levels of involvement with Civil War II, but it really just, like, sucked everything into its black hole of... Because if you're not reading the Civil War, like, series, you're sitting there wondering why your Hellcat comic suddenly is talking about the She-Hulk and that battle, and you're just like, I want her to go back to the mall, to the crop top shop, and like hanging out with Vampire Jubilee. Like, why is this? Right.
I mean, the thing that it could have done, I think Hellcat is actually a perfect example of this, is it could have taken the sort of Civil War heavy whatever and moved it into a kind of different mode. So if they had really sort of like done a Hellcat comic that just sort of touched on Civil War, where like, you know, they run into She-Hulk in the mall and they're trying on like different clothes or whatever, like that would have been better than just sort of trying to kind of shoehorn Civil War II content into...
I'm sure they had to. It was probably... And unfortunately, with Mockingbird, Clint was sort of a major player in the Civil War series. He murdered the Hulk and he was on trial for that. So that kind of had to be part of Mockingbird because she was sort of responding to that. But I think it did, like you said, a pretty good job. They had her sort of get away from it on. She's on like a cruise for those 3 issues that Civil War overlapped with Mockingbird, and it was in the background, but Chelsea Cain sort of was telling a murder mystery on the cruise, and like John mentioned, with all the sort of there's all this fun stuff, these little touches in the background, and I think that it just is a testament to Chelsea Cain's strength as an author, as opposed to, I'm not entirely sure like how one gets hired as like a comic book writer off the street, but I think that her having written novels made the writing of Mockingbird so strong and like so entertaining.
Right. She really has that sort of ability to do complex, multifaceted plots that have a sort of continuing overarching structure and sort of let you into different sort of things at different points that is a cut above a lot of the sort of comic book plotting, even very good comic book plotting.
Yeah, and the other thing that, for me personally, is that her sort of sense of humor was very much in line with what I find funny.
Sure.
And I don't think she would, disagree with what I would say, but Mockingbird was a very feminist comic book.
Right. Let's get to that right now. Let's just say all the issues are available now in 2 trades because the thing has ended. And let's just talk about the ending.
So, the comic ended. Marvel announced the series is ending, and it was a little disappointing because I really loved it, and it was also a little disappointing that we didn't get, any post-Civil War issues of Mockingbird.
Yeah.
The series ended, I think it may have even ended before Civil War did.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's true.
And Chelsea Cain announced the ending on Twitter, and about the same time, they released the cover for the last issue, or not that they just released it, but they were using it to promote that the last issue was coming out. And the last issue of Mockingbird is a picture of Bobbi wearing a t-shirt that says, "Ask me about my feminist agenda." And that just sort of sparked the sort of terrible comics Twitter that burbles up during things like this. It's so dumb because this was a little known comic, it kind of flew under the radar. It was only 8 issues. It was already over at the point when Chelsea Cain had to sustain this ongoing harassment to the point where she deleted her Twitter and stopped engaging with the comics community. And it's just why would you do that?
I know.
Why would you do that? Harassers.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those things you really got to scratch your head at people who it's kind of mind-boggling to think that you would get that upset about something like that. I mean,
the idea that there's a comic out there that's not targeted to sort of the white male persona, and it's not even they can't enjoy it, it's just not targeted. It's not they can't read it.
Right. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, I meant to look this up before we did this, but I forgot, that Mockingbird turns up in All New X-Men, in either the most recent or the just before most recent issue of All New X-Men, in which there's a sort of plague outbreak that she has to come help sort out, and she's wearing that same t-shirt you could see under her jacket. So it's kind of cool that one of the other artists in the Marvel group decided to kind of make the point that that was, I thought, of sort of a kind of a cool sort of solidarity moment.
But they can all stick it in their ear because Mockingbird got nominated for 2 Eisners.
Right, quite deservedly.
Best New Series and Best Writing, which she's very deserving of those nominations. So let's talk about something. Let's not end on a downer note. How about some of our favorite moments from the series?
I love that whole, I think it was issue number, was it 2 or 3, where they're she and Hunter are getting held up by the BDSM demon cult or whatever.
That's the second one.
Yeah, and they end up meeting the queen with her corgis. It was funny too because you see the corgis in the first one, you're like, why are those there? That's a very peculiar sort of thing. I think that may be a first for corgi appearances in Marvel Comics.
Yeah, that one's really funny because that one's got really great Hunter Bobbi banter. So they're trying to escape this Hellfire Club, and they're just arguing over who has to do the laundry and that kind of stuff. My favorite issue is issue number 3, which is, I think, the real sort of hard-hitting feminist one, where there's a girl who has gotten some sort of mutant powers or something, and it's all about the way that young girls are treated in the media, and there's a couple of flashbacks to Bobbi in her childhood trying to mutate herself so she can get superpowers, and There's the very last panel when after Bobbi saves the day, she's like, "Someone bring me a glass of Chardonnay."
Right.
I was like, "Bobbi, you and me end our day the same way."
Yeah.
So I really like that one.
I thought that was really brilliant. Yeah, so this is, once again, like, you can read the Chelsea Cain, Kate Nemchek one in the trades, which we have here at the library. Please come check them out.
Yeah, the one shot is also in that trade.
Right. It was funny, when I pulled those out to reread them, I was like, wait, was it an alternative cover? Did I just get two versions of it? No, wait, that's the one shot.
If you like Mockingbird, or if you've already read it and you like it and you're looking for other things, or if you're just looking for other suggestions, I would definitely have to say Kelly Thompson's Hawkeye, which is current running series, and it's not Clint Hawkeye, it's Kate Bishop Hawkeye.
Right.
I think that's got the same sort of feel to it, with a lot of sort of background jokes and like asides and stuff, with the same sort of sarcastically quipping character with some feminist undertones to it.
Right.
So the Kelly Thompson's Hawkeye, I think I would definitely recommend.
Yeah, it's really definitely enjoyable. And I think that it's worth. Okay, so I think we both have some problems with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as a TV show, but it's worth watching the seasons that have
Adrian Pilecki
and Nick Blood as Lance Hunter. Nick, basically the sort of Lance Hunter defining character. I mean, there's a sort of tragic end to this too, in the sense that they went off the show because they were sort of offered the chance to do their own sort of
spin-off series,
and then the network didn't take the option on it, which is really irritating because that was about the only good thing of.
Yeah, there are like John said, there are a number of things to question about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but Bobbi and Hunter were two things or one thing if you consider them a unit, that the show did consistently very well.
Yeah, they really, Nick Blood and Adrian Pilecki, really had a great acting rapport. They wrote really great sort of banter for them. And it was a sort of interesting sort of side story to a lot of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. stuff, which was really kind of dark and depressing for no adequately explained reason. Well, we got anything else on this?
Nope, I think we've covered it.
All right, very good. So thanks for listening.
Thank you.
No Talking in the Library is a production of Mentor Public Library. Views expressed here are those of the presenters and do not necessarily reflect those of the library board or the library administration. Our producer is Marilyn Weiss. Our webmaster is Mary Pelton. Our theme music was done by Adriana Krickel. You can find us at our website at www.mentorpl.org/adults/no talking.